Hi folks, Vipin here. A lot of my students have been asking me, if you start a business, what would be the ideal format for your business? As in, should I run this business by myself, or should I run it with a friend, or should I go about starting a company? Now in this video, let's evaluate which in fact would be the best choice. Now before that, what are the choices that are there when it comes to you being an entrepreneur? As in, if you set up a business, what would be the format of the business? Now firstly, you have a sole proprietorship. In simple terms, a sole proprietor is an individual who runs a business by himself. Okay, when you say that you are the owner of a business, it means that you are the person who has invested capital. Capital is the money that you would use to generate revenue. So if one person has invested capital, in that case you would call it as a sole proprietorship. In the second case, you call it as a partnership. Now in case of a partnership, you have more than one person investing. So there are two people who are investing in a business. In that case, you would refer to it as a partnership. Companies, on the other hand, go through a different route altogether. Now I'll explain each of them in brief, and hopefully you should be able to understand which is the ideal format for starting a business. Now, in the first choice, that would be sole proprietorship, you have a wonderful advantage of you being your own boss. And believe me, you being your own boss is one of the best feelings ever, because you get to do what you want and you do it without any restrictions from any authority. Another one, sole proprietorship is ideal for a family business. Most family businesses today are in fact a format of sole proprietorship itself. Okay, so sole proprietorship is ideal for a family business, low investment and potential for high returns. The website I've started, vipinmks.com, is in fact run by one person, me. I've invested the capital, so I'm the only owner here. My total investment in this website, excluding the marketing cost, has been below 3,000 rupees. So you can see how little the investment can be. And then no authority to report to. There is no government official whom you have to report to, publish reports and say that this is how the business is doing. You have none of that. However, there are some flaws to this particular type of business. When you are only one person who is investing capital, the amount of activities you can do is in fact very limited. Now that's okay. If you're comfortable with that, it's perfectly fine. Now with respect to me, there is only one person who's working on vipinmks.com. That's one of the reasons why my resources are quite limited. When my students who happen to be studying science request my help, I'm unable to do it completely because the amount of resources I have is very less. There's only one person who's working. In that case, it's only me. So I'm not able to do the entire thing as and when they go about requesting it. So that's a big flaw that you would come across. The limited capital investment means the activities that you can do is in fact quite less as well. But nonetheless, sole proprietorship is one of the most ideal forms of business if you are just getting into entrepreneurship. Okay, now there's another one, partnership. When you start a partnership is more suitable when professionals are needed. Doctors, lawyers and chartered accountants. It is easy to set up and almost no documentation is required. Now when I say almost no documentation is required, it's because in some cases many people would in fact draft something which is known as a partnership deed. In the partnership deed, the partners decide what these guys are supposed to do, how much capital every person has invested, what will be their salaries, and how is it that they'll share the profits. Okay, now in that case you could go about drafting a partnership deed. But nonetheless, the law in India doesn't require you to draft a partnership deed. Even for example, an oral partnership agreement. Okay, even that is in fact considered perfectly fine as per the Indian legal system. Now there are some flaws when it comes to doing a partnership. Now for example, when you have more than one person here, a partnership requires a minimum two people. There's a good possibility of conflict of interest. Now, what is the meaning of conflict of interest? Now, when you and your friends are deciding to, say, go to a restaurant, you will come across one person coming out with their own opinion. Hey, let's go to this place which serves Chinese, let's go to this place that serves Mediterranean. Each of us have got our own opinion, and that leads to a conflict. And partnership is in fact having a greater scope for conflicts than when it comes to a sole proprietorship. Okay, and then the most ideal format. Before I get to that, this is one of the ideal examples for a partnership firm. In fact, Guru and Jana, the chartered accountants, if you happen to be a resident anywhere around Southern Circle, I'm sure you'd have come across the office of Guru and Jana. Now there you can see the number of people who happen to be working in this organization, as in terms of partners. You can actually see it's not just one or two people, it's in fact quite a lot. Now the advantage we have when it comes to a partnership is greater capital, but at the same time there's a greater chance of conflict of interest. Now, although you have more people here, more people means it results to greater specialization. Now, I'm guessing the chartered accountants you see in the picture there, each person is an expert in a different field. One person might be an expert in indirect taxes, particularly excise. Another person might be an expert in sales tax. Another person might be an expert in auditing. Another person might be an expert in direct tax. One authority on VAT. So each of the people there could have their own expertise. That's a very, very cool advantage you would be able to get in a partnership. Now remember, when I'm working on my website, my knowledge is mostly restricted to commerce. When I go about making science notes, I need to confirm with students and check. That's because I'm not an expert in science, not yet at least. However, in a partnership, you have many people working and many experts working together. The quality of work you come across is significantly better than what you would come across when it comes to a sole proprietorship. Okay, so what is the next format when it comes to establishing a business? A company. You've always heard of this very, very cool phrase, CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Now you can't really call yourself as a CEO if you happen to be part of a sole proprietorship. It's ideal when you go about doing a company. Now in case of a sole proprietorship and a partnership, you can start these businesses without taking permission from Government of India. I mean, for some types of businesses you have to take a permission, but in most cases you need not. Okay. Now when it comes to a company, you have to go through the procedures as per the Companies Act of 1956. You cannot put up a board in front of your house the next day and call yourself a company. That's possible with a sole proprietorship and a partnership. However, it's certainly not when it comes to a company. Now companies have quite a few bit of disadvantages, but that doesn't stop people from starting a company. I'll tell you how one major advantage in fact offsets all the other disadvantages when it comes to starting a company. Okay, so before I get to that, some of the disadvantages, it's not as easy as you think, because when you start a company you need to go through Government of India rules and regulations, and that in fact takes a long period of time. Another thing that is there, the duration that you would have when it comes to the reports, and I'm sorry, not the duration, the different documents that you need to submit during the course of running a company. That in fact is quite a lot. For every meeting that you conduct, you have to submit a report to Government of India giving them a description of what really happened in the meeting. So for something as small as that is considered extremely important. Okay, and then what is that advantage that I mentioned, that one major advantage that offsets all the other disadvantages of starting a company? Okay, limited liability. Now when you start a company, you're able to get this wonderful advantage called as limited liability. Now you might have seen in the newspapers and media, I love how the media exaggerates and they keep saying Malia is getting funding for United Breweries, but he's not spending the salaries and he's not using that money and paying off the salaries of his employees in Kingfisher Airlines. Now, the reason that happens is because of limited liability. One more case would be when Malia donated several kilograms of gold to Tirupati. People of Kingfisher were complaining our salaries are not paid, yet he is donating gold to Lord Venkateshwara. Now that happens here because of, again, the golden concept of limited liability. If I start a partnership or a sole proprietorship, and let's say I approach a bank for a loan, I'm approaching them for a business loan. The first check that you see there on top, they give it in the name of Vipin Mandyam. They give it in my name. But if I start a company, let's say I name my company as Cybertron Education Limited. Okay, I chose Cybertron because I'm a huge fan of Transformer series, and that's one of the reasons why I picked Cybertron there. So Cybertron Education Limited, I start a company called Cybertron Education Limited. In the second case, when I start a company, the same business loan is given in the name of Cybertron Limited, Cybertron Education Limited. But in the first case, it's given in my name. In both the cases, I'm going to use this to expand my website, to make it into something bigger. But in one case, you can see it's my name there, and in the second case, it's the name of my company that is there. In limited liability, that's a wonderful privilege that is extended only to companies, wherein if the company in fact takes a loan, the loan is in fact obtained in the company's name and not the founder of the company. Now, I might be the founder of this company, but the loan is not given in my name. It's in fact given in the name of Cybertron Education Limited. So what's the big deal? Let's say I'm unable to repay this loan and I get into severe losses. The first thing the bank is going to ask is, sell away my company assets and then repay the losses. Now, I'm currently running my business from my home, and this house that I'm currently staying happens to be in the name of my mum. So when I run a company, I would in fact show the same thing. The office I'm currently staying is in fact belonging to my mother and not belonging to Cybertron Education Limited. When that happens, the bank cannot do anything else. They have no authority to in fact force my mum sell away the house and go about repaying this loan that I have taken. But unfortunately, in the first case, when it comes to Vipin Mandyam, if I'm running this as a sole proprietorship, which I am, and if I take up a loan and I'm unable to repay the loan, I will have to sell away this house. The reason is this is something which the bank has given in my name, and even my relatives, in fact the close relatives, my mum, could also be held responsible for repaying this loan. That's not possible when it comes to companies. That's not possible when it comes to companies. You cannot ask the founders of the company to repay the loan unless and until the loan they have taken is in their own name. But very cleverly, they will never take the loan in their name. They'll in fact take it in the name of a company. Which brings me to another important advantage. Companies have got something called as artificial person. Meaning, just like how you and I can open a bank account in our name, a company, although is a non-living entity, can also open a bank account in their own name. So this is one of the points of artificial person. Now, as you can see, company format of ownership is in fact considered to be the most advantageous. If you're patient enough to go through the procedures of Companies Act and establish yourself as a limited liability company, then a large part of your problems in fact get settled. Although sole proprietorship and partnership have their own advantages, one major advantage of companies, according to me, supersedes everything else. I hope this video made clear on which business format is ideal when you start your own. I strongly recommend my students to take up entrepreneurship, because believe me, when you do your own business, when you do what you like, there is no feeling in the world that is better than that. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day and do subscribe to my videos. Bye.